As a young girl, did you ever dream of being swept away by your favorite hero or a knight in shining armor? Did it take too many husbands or boyfriends for you to find out that neither of them would come? Were you looking for a man to breathe destiny into your life? Did you know that God is the only creator and everyone else who makes something is an inventor? Could it be that the one who formed and shaped you before your mother even knew you were there is the one you were looking for? The God of all creation completed woman when he formed her with his own hands and breathed into her the affinity of himself, his spirit. As women created by God in his image, we are whole beings. Our challenge has always been searching out the truth about what God said instead of listening to what society tells us. Let's face it, today we live in a society driven by looks and profits. Looks sell and profits soar when we use two things, women and sex. The media, television, video, and billboard makers have mastered the art of helping people see something on women to make another woman or man want that. As women, we see another woman, her hair, her dress, her lifestyle, her husband, or her friends, and it makes us feel as though something in us is lacking. When we see a woman that appears to have it all, we sometimes feel like that woman is more complete. What makes a woman feel like she doesn't have it all? Having a man, business, ministry, children, friends, etc., doesn't make woman complete. The woman was complete when God made her. If she had needed anything else, God, her creator, would have given it to her. God brought the woman to the man because the man needed her, not the other way around. It was not that the man was made incomplete, but that he needed to see something. He needed to see just how great a matter of his existence is, being made in the image of God. If you read Genesis chapters 1 and 2, you might have just missed that. When Adam saw all the living creatures God had made, he noticed that they all had something in common. He noticed that each species had a part and a counterpart. That is, each animal had an animal opposite of its own kind. He noticed that for each creature there was a matching creature, and they physically fit with each other in connecting parts. Woman, when she was created, was physically designed for Adam, fitting him or matching his surrounding parts. He found that for every part of his body he could see, there was a corresponding counterpart on her body. He could see that she was like him, but he could also see that she was not. She had corresponding parts that were taken out of his parts. So Adam called her woman because she was taken out of man. The whole nature of their oppositeness being counterparts of each other was to reflect the splendor or beauty of man as a created being, because nothing else looked or operated like Adam. In other words, woman was made to show the beauty and superiority of mankind over all the other things God created. 1 Corinthians 11:2-13 says it like this: Man is the crowning glory of God, and woman is the crowning glory of man. Man was designed to manifest or show the splendor of God, and woman was designed out of man to manifest or show the splendor of mankind. There is a connection between God, man, and woman. This connection is extremely important. It is the first relationship existing between God and all mankind, and it's included woman as the crowning achievement of God's creation. What this means, ladies, is that from the beginning, you were a part of a miraculous, one-of-a-kind relationship, or covenant, if you will, that God had with all mankind. The word covenant in the original language used in the Bible meant cutting a pact, P-A-C-T, cutting a pact, or made by passing between pieces of flesh. Made by passing between pieces of flesh. When God made Adam, he scooped up clay from the earth, formed it with his hands, and blew into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. He did not cut between pieces of flesh, or in other words, form a covenant, because the third party to the agreement had not been cut yet. We were not yet formed from the man's flesh and blood. God did not establish his first act of covenant until after woman came on the scene. She was cut and formed through the flesh and blood of man by the hand of God himself. When God created woman, ladies, God cut a pact with mankind that included woman and could not be formed without her. She was the key to his destiny. Her purpose was to help or aid him in the whole scheme of things in creation. The Bible tells us that God put the man to sleep and took a rib from the man's flesh, and from it God created the woman. Can you imagine the hand of God going into the side of Adam while he is asleep and taking from him this piece of bone and flesh stained with Adam's blood? This is the first time that the Bible records God putting his hand into flesh and blood to make flesh and blood. Since the beginning, the cutting of the flesh and spilling of blood together with someone else always established a covenant. It signified an irrevocable agreement, something that was signed in blood and therefore could not be undone. When God creates woman on the scene in Genesis, he shows me two spectacular things. One, woman was made in God's image because man was made in God's image. And two, woman reflected God's choice of mankind above all of creation as the vessel upon which to reflect his glory. This indicates that something beautiful happens when God chooses to reflect himself in the physical realm. In Genesis, you get the creation of two beautiful, perfect, and splendid entities we call man and woman in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, you get a resurrected Savior called Jesus Christ and a body of worshipers called the church. In the Old Testament, you have God cutting through the flesh of man with his own hands to establish a final creation, woman. In the New Testament, you have God cutting through the flesh of a Savior to give birth to his church. Ladies, notice the significance of your womankind here, your womanhood here. God chooses to make a beautiful, perfectly designed, inside and out, feminine, intelligent creature to be the end result of what happens when God cuts through the flesh of his own prized possession. Observe that man did not have any say in God taking this approach. Can you imagine what the woman might have looked like if God hadn't put the man to sleep? Some of the men we know would have said, "Ooh, give her 4 breasts, 3 butts, and you get the picture." Aren't you glad God put him to sleep? Some of us need to stop and thank God right now for having that wisdom. Woman was the result of this first cutting of the flesh that God enacted between himself and all mankind. She represented the beauty in God loving his created people above all that he had created, because they, the man and the woman, were made in his own image. They were given God's spirit. It was the greatest part of himself that God could give, for it was what made them most like him. Since man is described as God's glory in 1 Corinthians 11, verses 7 through 12, that makes us, women, in our most rare and basic form, the glory of God's glory. Now, when someone looks at you crazy or you feel like your fundamental right to belong is questioned, you can face yourself and others knowing this: you are the glory of God's glory. You are a woman. This is not about who is more important, women or men. On the contrary, it signifies the distinctive purpose of women and how we relate to existence with mankind. Women knowing and understanding this helps us see how significant being a woman is to mankind as a whole and womankind in particular. You are important to God because you were made to honor God's glory. You had a specific role in God's creation of all mankind, and that role was to represent or give a correct opinion of God's glory, the man. And that's just the beginning. God uses the word woman in the Bible to show significant meaning in relationship to his people and his kingdom. Yes, women are important to God.